It's Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods.
.06 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. It is a Monday. So you know what that means. Rinse and repeat.
Today's show is sponsored by Osculation Rejuvenation for when it hits the fan.
It does it daily at this time, especially as we get close to election time, and you got to listen to the politicians. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's not when it hits the fan. That's just when it gets knee deep. My mistake.
Warning, this show contains reference to guns, liberty, limited government, low taxation, the cult of climate change, free thinking, cigar smoking, short people, rubber chickens, Karen's bureaucracy, liberal buzzwords, tour runs, traffic, toilets, terrible jokes, and more. No apologies will be issued. Guest callers may express any opinion they want without fear of being canceled. Unless you're a loudmouth jerk like Dave, then Glenn will hang up on you. Strap in, hold on to your coffee, and feel free to participate.
This disclaimer does not refer to every person named Dave, just one particular Dave from San Francisco. We know a lot of Daves. They call this show all the time, and they're great people. So don't call this program and complain that we use your name. That would be a real Dave move, Dave.
Okay, I got something different for you this morning just to start off the program. Everybody was asking me when they saw video and a lot of pictures of a plane, a small plane, that landed on Interstate 25 just north of Cheyenne on, Saturday. Well, actually, I just missed seeing it. I was heading from Cheyenne north, and the incident happened about 20 minutes after I had left the area. If I had been just a little later, I could have seen the thing. And there was a lot of posting. If you hadn't seen this small plane lands, and this guy gets and he pulls over. It's a little thing. It's like a little two-seater airplane, and a top wing, and he pulls over. And then gets out and starts working on the engine. And a police officer pulled up. Other people asked if he was okay. And he gets out. He pulls it off to the shoulder of the road and sticks it so the tail is over the grass. The nose is pointing toward the highway. So he's not got his wings sticking out on the highway, in other words. And then he opens up the cowling there and he gets some tools out. And he lets the police officer and everybody else know, oh, I'm fine. And then he gets into the engine. And whatever was going on in the engine, he worked on it for a bit, fixed it. Not sure what the problem would be. Then climbed back in, started up, and the police officer made sure that he had a clear runway going, and he took off. And the kind of airplane that he was in is small enough that he doesn't need much runway. So he's good. So some pilots in certain airplanes will choose to fly over certain roadways just in case there's a problem. So I decided to go ahead, because a lot of stories were put up about this. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the details. Jim, if you're out there, especially for guys like you, exactly what was this? This was a Stinson. And Mark my flight instructor, Mark, has one of these. It was built in 1969. The guy's name is Timothy. He's from Missouri. Now, this particular little airplane model was built in the 60s. And if you take a look at what's going on inside, there's not a lot in there. Very few gauges, very few controls. In fact, the plane is mostly fabric. It's got like a metal body. It's mostly fabric. The engine, 85 horsepower. So it's a light little, that's not much. It's a light little engine. Top cruising speed is about 87 miles an hour. It usually goes faster than that. In fact, when it's windy out and he's flying into the wind, he'll look down at the highway below him and everybody's going faster than he is. But he doesn't care, because that's not why people like this buy these airplanes. They buy them because they're old and classic, and they're just fun to fly. I've seen, for those people who are into this tailwheel versions of this guy had a tricycle gear version of this airplane. But yeah, it's just which means two wheels under the pilot and one wheel under the nose is the tricycle gear configuration. But yeah, he's not out there trying to. He was 25 miles north of Cheyenne when he landed. So that's plenty of open highway. If you know the area, that's plenty of open highway. And a guy like that's not out there flying around trying to do anywhere fast or, it's just a light little fun airplane to go low and slow and enjoy the art of flying. And that's it. As far as fixing his own engine, an engine like that is like a little four-cylinder thing. I mean, it's 85 horsepower. It's an old four-cylinder little engine, and it doesn't take a whole lot to maintain something like that. So for the guy to pull over was literally what he did. He merged into traffic. I was on the highway that day, like I said, just a little before he landed. And there was not much traffic on the highway. So he had plenty of space to come down and land and just pull over. And then he knows what's wrong, got his toolbox out, fixed it, and just took off again. So no huge emergency, but there you go. Morning, Red, Rez, and Casper. I love the story about the plane. That sounds so much like a Wyoming thing. Yeah, well, and it is interesting to see in many places, in a place like Wyoming, we've had our occasional wrecks. I mean, it happens anywhere. Cars wreck, planes wreck, typically does. But in most cases, in Wyoming, the pilot has options as far as where to set down. And in most cases, they do a pretty good job of doing it. And with little airplanes like that, typically, unless they're just having fun flying over farmland or something like that, typically what the pilot will do if he's flying cross country, this guy's from Missouri, so I wonder if he's taking a long trip somewhere and just enjoying flying, but he'll stay over roads like an interstate just in case something goes wrong. And like I said, a little plane like that puttering along where the traffic on the interstate may very well be going faster than he is, he does not need much room to take off and land. So he can merge. And in Wyoming, on a Saturday morning, like I said, I was just on that road before he landed. There wasn't much traffic out there. So he had all the room in the world. And then when he went to take back off again, I mean, the only thing you got to worry about coming down on some roadways is smaller roadways tend to have signs and power lines over them, things like that. So got to watch out for stuff like that. But your typical interstate highway for a small plane like this, a little two-seater, side-by-side seating. So, and it's tight in there, too. I mean, two fat guys are not getting in that airplane. It's a tight little side-by-side seating. So, he can just go ahead and go right up the middle of both lanes and land perfectly fine. In fact, he can even just land in the right lane. He has plenty of room to do it. And then just pull over the way he did. So I thought that was a really interesting story with everything that I had seen about it and read about it. And people were sending me videos like crazy. Hey, have you seen this? Hey, have you seen this? And I appreciate everybody doing that. There were a couple of people who were wondering, was it me? No, wasn't. But I do keep that in mind when I'm up there. Like all of my friends who are pilots that love to fly, they do the same thing. And that's part of their training. As we fly along, we look down going, and if something were to go wrong right now, where would I put it? Got to keep that in mind. If something happened to me right now, and just keep in the back of the mind, where is a good place to potentially set this thing down? Because if the engine does quit, essentially it becomes a big glider. It's just a matter of how much time do I have to glide before I'm going to have to touch down. So pick a nice open spot, glide to it, and see if you can do a nice landing. This guy did a great job doing it. Made for an interesting weekend story. All right. You think America wastes money? I got one for you on what Canada's doing. That's next.
Yesterday, scientists in the United States revealed that beer contains small traces of female hormones. To prove their theory, they fed 100 men 12 pints of beer and observed that 100% of them started talking nonsense and couldn't drive.
Oh, snap! Oh, snap! Wake Up Wyoming goes anywhere you do with the Wake Up Wyoming app. Free download for Apple and Android. This is K2 Radio.
6:22 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. You might like this. I'm working on one more story to post on the Wake Up Wyoming site this morning. It's been shared with me by a few people, so I thought I'd go ahead and do about it. If you're heading into Colorado, you'll see occasionally a billboard that sort of picks on what's going on in Colorado. This billboard has the colors on it of the Venezuelan flag, and it says, Venezuela ahead, be prepared. And then it gives a number of an LLC that put the billboard up there, stuff like that. So if you don't know, if you're not paying attention to what's happening in the news, you might not understand what that's all about. Those who are paying attention to the news, you get it. All right. I was going to pick on Canada for a minute. You know, I'm a tightwad with your money. The people's money. Your money. It's in your pocket. Belongs to you. So when government spends it on all sorts of stupid things, and our government is not the worst, believe it or not, all the idiotic things. Other countries sometimes try to top us, like it's a competition. Headline, Canada spends over $32,000 for intersectional feminist report on outer space development. Now, what I want to know is who is the person, and I'll actually call them brilliant, who comes up with these ideas. And I guess the only reason I've never done this is because I have a moral code. Somebody, and I'm forgetting how much money, somebody here in America got our government to spend a whole bunch of money to figure out, well, things about who built the pyramids and so on. And they weren't archaeologists at all. Putting shrimp on treadmills. Yeah, idiotic things like that. Cult of climate change stuff, too. Okay, so why not make a bunch of money just doing stupid studies? And you don't even have to come up with the study. In many cases, what they turn in as a study is garbage. It's like someone who has to prepare for a test and cram at the last minute or do a book report and they do it at the last minute. And what they turn into the teacher is just garbage. So this often happens. People write reports and do studies, and government pays them quite a bit for it. All right, so let's read this one. The story says, if humanity is to move beyond the bounds of its early confines, adequate technology isn't the only thing that's standing in its way. There's also the critical studies, gender and sexuality academics set, top concerns for some people. Just a couple of weeks ago, the Dean of Social Sciences at Wesleyan University voiced worries that space exploration may follow the European Christian imperialist pattern and that indigenous beliefs about celestial bodies won't be taken into consideration. You see, I think that to me, this just depends on who is exploring space. Let's take let's go to South America, and we'll pick some tribe in South America that you and I don't know about. Some people living out in the jungle out there that we don't know about. Well, they suddenly become advanced, and they're going to explore space. And so they're going to name the stars what they call the stars, right? And the planets what they call the planets. Screw us. It's their beliefs, not ours. Well, if Europeans are the ones exploring space, then we're going to call things what we call it, right? Shouldn't be a problem. Well, there's also the indigenous scholars who warned merely listening for evidence of alien civilizations could be interpreted as eavesdropping or surveillance. So we shouldn't be sitting here listening to outer space to try to find if there's life out there. That's just rude. That's eavesdropping. How dare we? Now the Canadian Department of National Defense thought it prudent to use taxpayers' funds, they spent $32,000, for an intersectionalist feminist perspective regarding space development. Give yourself a couple of minutes to think about that. And now, here's what's in the report. According to the Canadian Taxpayer Federation, the report has hidden harms of humans' scrutiny of outer space. Says current approaches to outer space are heavy in Western, state-centric, militarized, masculine, and colonial problems, and encourages practices that are racist and exploitive and elitist and environmentally destructive. An intersectional approach, the report claims, can help examine how gender and other social identities overlap in ways that may compound the beliefs and harms and intersectionalities that people experience in relation to our outer space system. This sounds like listening to Kamala Harris speak. But it's from the same kind of people in the same train of thought. Existing approaches are gender biased. The language in major treaties and resolutions, terms such as mankind and astronaut and envoys of mankind, and man's entry into space, and manned and unmanned stations on the moon. Why? We can't have that. Oh, God. Okay, I'm just getting started. I was going to just touch on this and move on, but no. We got to explore this. Morning, Chet. Chet's sending me a text here. Did you see the Chicago gangs are mad at the illegal immigrants, criminal gangs? Yeah, I'm wondering, are the gangs from illegal immigrants and Chicago gangs going to fight at some point? Rianne and Fort Danger, wow. Just why do people put up with this nonsense? I hope Canada votes these morons out. No, see, I hope not, Rianne. We need to keep these people. I need the show prep, Rianne. I need the show prep. So, yeah, keep it coming. We'll finish this story after local news, update on your weather forecast. You and I get back into it again. Phone number is 888-97-WOODS. That's 888-97-WOODS. Or do what Rianne and Chet and Red are doing. You can text me using the Wake Up Wyoming app.
Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods on K2 Radio. Join the conversation at 888-97-WOODS.
6:36 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. It is a Monday, so rinse and repeat. 888-97-WOODS the phone number. Or 888-97-WOODS. Or you can go ahead and text me like several people. And it's one of the things I love about the show. I've barely even begun, and I'm already getting texts from Gillette, Casper, Yoder. Yeah, there's a place called Yoder, Wyoming, and Cheyenne and Laramie and so on. There's just people that are already up, and they're listening to the show and texting out there. So what I'm going through real quick here, a Canadian government has taken a look at space travel. And they've decided to go ahead and do a study. They paid for a study on intersectional feminists to report on space development. Yeah. So according to the Canadian Taxpayer Federation, the report has hidden harms. Now, as I read this to you, you're going to get a headache. I'm warning you now. So I know it's too early to drink, but do a shot. All right. Here we go. It sounds like listening to Kamala Harris' speech. It really does. There's hidden harms in security in outer space. Our current approaches to outer space are heavily with Western, state-centric, militarized, masculine, and colonial practices that are racist, exploitive, elitist, and environmentally destructive. An intersectional feminist approach, the report claims, can help examine how gender and other social identities overlap in ways that may compound these beliefs, harms, and intersectionalities that people experience in relation to outer space systems. You getting a headache already? Because I am just reading it. So in short, the report centers on how high-tech space development will disproportionately affect what they consider marginalized groups, such as women, minorities, and the global South, it says. Report author Jessica West, who, now I'm going to describe this as best I can. They have a picture of her here. Very attractive looking lady, but it's one of those with a nice smile. But when you look at her eyes and the expression, you get that little shiver up your spine of red flags and psychopaths. Okay. Karens. Right. The report's author, Jessica West, notes her concerns. Existing approaches to space travel are gender biased. The language of major treaties, resolutions, and other international instruments related to outer space is highly genderized and biased toward males. Such terms as mankind, astronauts, and envoys of mankind, man's entry into outer space, manned and unmanned stations on the moon, and manned spacecraft, and man-made frequently used. like these approaches normalize violence and exploitation by using colonial biased terms like exploration and conquest, referring to space as a frontier and depicting outer space as a hostile and desolate environment that unpeopled, inhuman, and controlled, so it can provide some extractable resources that we should have to go after. Yes, of course we're going into space for resources, of course. First off, she doesn't know much, and this is very typical, doesn't know much about how language works. To talk about mankind, we're talking about human. Yeah, not male, human, as in everybody. So to say mankind, we're talking about the human race, which is not gender specific. Okay, that is generic. Then there is man and woman, which is, of course, gender specific. But to talk about man-made is, again, gender neutral term. It's not referring to men. It's a gender neutral term. So she doesn't know much about how language works. But of course we're going into space looking for resources. You know, human beings on this planet, our sun is going to be around for a few more billion years, but at some point, if the human race is to continue, we need to get out of here. Now, we got a while, a few billion years, we got a while, but we're going to have to start figuring out how to move to other places if we want to continue as a species in the long run. And the time to do that would be now. And yeah, we need to start looking at what's around us, because the only way to get out into space is to take a look at what's out there and use it. That's how we do this. I don't understand why she would have a problem with this. This is how we move on. Dave in Torrington. Morning, Dave. Happy first Monday of autumn. Instead of working about space development, I wish Canadians would worry about keeping that cold north of the border this winter. No, Dave, they're not going to do that. Canadians like testing their winter weather machine. And remember when Canadians used to come down here to our vending machines and clog it up with their quarters? Yeah, that's just the worst of it. Gets around wintertime, they like to just blast some of that cold air on us as often as they can. Overall, I like Canadians. Mostly. 642, wake up.
He's not a politician, but his pants are on fire. Could someone grab an extinguisher? Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods.
6:48 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. Back we go to the ice box. Frank Gambino waiting by. Notice the sound effects, Frank? Pretty good.
So your computer actually worked?
Well, actually, okay, Miss Mary fixed it.
Well, of course, yes. Yeah. I was in the room on Friday and thinking, oh, okay.
Yeah, she found something running in the background that was trying to was loading or whatever it was doing, and it was just killing, and it wouldn't finish whatever it was trying to do. So she just got rid of it, and now everything's up and running and just fine. So
that's the way it goes. If it's not working, get rid of it.
Yes. So I came across, I think, to help you out on a Monday, with the dumbest possible first story I could offer you. This is useless, Frank. Okay.
Useless.
So I came across it's very well put together. It's a big card website style. United States of Sandwiches. And it just names every state's sandwiches. So, for example, for Florida, and I would agree with this one, it says the Cuban sandwich, which was actually invented in Tampa. And people love the Cuban sandwich. But, yeah, that's a Tampa Bay invention. Okay, now, so I go scrolling down to take a look at, well, what do they do for Wyoming? And, of course, it's easy to find Wyoming because we're always the last on the page.
Yeah.
That's easy. Just scroll down.
We're by West Virginia.
I have never heard of the trout sandwich.
I have not either.
Yeah, okay.
I would think something more like a prime rib sandwich.
Yes, or something with bison.
Or a steak sandwich.
Yes.
A bison sandwich.
Okay, that would be good, but why the trout sandwich? Now, and in thinking about it, I thought, okay, by the time they get to the bottom of this list, they're getting tired of doing it. So, and they don't want to investigate us, so they just throw something on there. Now, you, like me, you're traveling all over the place, all over Wyoming, so you've eaten a lot of different places. Have you ever seen a trout sandwich on a menu?
No.
Okay.
I never really went looking for it either.
Yeah, well, neither have I, but I like to read what are local items on the menu.
Yeah, if it's a walleye sandwich, then that changes everything.
For example, last night, some friends took me to a restaurant, and it was a lasagna, but with bison meat.
Oh,
and I one time had a shepherd's pie at a restaurant, with bison meat. See what I mean? Yeah. There's also the bison burger out there. Yeah. So, see, that I could understand because I see bison stuff all over the place. If anybody out there has ever seen a trout sandwich at any Wyoming restaurant, I would love to know.
Take a picture of the menu for us.
Please, because I think what happened is they got to the bottom of the list and they were just sick of making this list. And so they thought, well, they like to fish in Wyoming, so trout. We'll just throw that out.
Oh, boy, okay. Well, in college football, another woeful performance by the Wyoming Cowboys. They lost at North Texas on Saturday, 44-17. The Pokes are 0-4, and they are just plain bad this year, so far this year. And defensively, they really struggled in Denton. The North Texas offense rang up 534 yards of offense, and quarterback Chandler Morris threw for 305 with 2 touchdowns. Tackling has been bad for UW. There was just a handful of plays that resulted in a loss of yardage. The offense wasn't much better with 10 points on the board, augmented by a 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown by Tyler King. Quarterback Evan Swoboda continues to struggle in all 4 games so far. Now, on Saturday, he was 11 of 23 for 155 yards and a touchdown, plus the offensive line has been iffy all year long. The coaches are to be blamed for this mess, and it's time for the staff to fix the team, which we requested last week. Cowboys will open up Mountain West Conference play on Saturday at home at Saturday night, meeting the Air Force Academy. In the NFL, the Denver Broncos actually won a game. The first one of the year. They upset Tampa Bay on the road yesterday, 27-7. New Bronco quarterback Bo Nix did not throw an interception. He was 25 of 36 for 216 yards and a rushing TD. More than anything else, the Bronco defense really stood up to the Buccaneer offense with 7 sacks. Broncos are 1-2. They'll be on the road on Sunday at the New York Jets. High school football from over the weekend. First and 4A, Sheridan won their 35th consecutive game, crushing Cheyenne East 48-18. That win sets the Wyoming State record for consecutive victories as Cheyenne East falls to 3-1. Kelly Walsh is 3-1. They rallied to beat Thunder Basin and Gillette 34-17. Natrona is 2-2. They were shut out by 4-0 Campbell County 24-0. Laramie 1-3 on the year following a 38-16 loss to Rock Springs. Cheyenne Central won their first game of the year, downing winless Cheyenne South 49-6. In 2A, Burns over Glen Rock 33-12 and won a 9-man. Pine Bluffs over Wright 42-10 and won a 6-man Midwest over KC 45-42. High school volleyball, Kelly Walsh won the gold bracket of the Casper Invitational over the weekend, handing Laramie their first loss of the year, 25-21 and 21-14. Natrona made the championship match of the silver bracket, but lost to Sheridan in straight sets. And that's it in sports.
Okay, so at some point, we don't have to do it now, but at some point we're going to have a serious conversation about our Cowboys.
They're bad.
Yeah. Now, and the only question I have for this segment, though, is we knew they weren't going to win this one, but how bad did they look losing this one? Really bad. Okay. Because I thought if they could at least win, but give us some but give us some confidence in the way they struggled and fought, and we thought, oh, there's something there. They just got to draw it out. But you're just saying they're bad.
They're bad.
Not what people want to hear from
No. They don't. Because they had 17 returning starters.
Wow.
And there's been guys that have been hurt, but they're bad.
Later this morning, let's kind of
they're bad.
Talk about it. Okay, bad. That's all you need to know, folks.
Bad.
Okay, but he didn't say sucked.
Bad.
Just bad. All right, thank you, Frank. Coming up on some local business we have to take care. We're going to roll into news time after that. National, local, update on your weather forecast. You and I get back into it again. It's a Monday, and you're officially in fall now. It's Wake Up Wyoming. Six the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. It is a Monday.
Today's show is sponsored by Osculation Rejuvenation for when the hits the fan.
And as a Monday, you know, that means rinse and repeat.
Warning, this show contains reference to guns, liberty, limited government, low taxation, the cult of climate change, free thinking, cigar smoking, short people, rubber chickens, Karen's bureaucracy, liberal buzzwords, tour runs, traffic, toilets, terrible jokes, and more. No apologies will be issued. Guest callers may express any opinion they want without fear of being canceled. Unless you're a loudmouth jerk like Dave, then Glenn will hang up on you. Strap in, hold on to your coffee, and feel free to participate.
This disclaimer does not refer to every person named Dave. Just one particular Dave from San Francisco. We know a lot of Daves. They call this show all the time, and they're great people. So don't call this program and complain that we use your name. That would be a real Dave move, Dave.
Chet and Yoder just sent a note to me on the Wake Up Wyoming app, which I have to admit, Chet, you've kind of nailed this one. This is the season where you put on a coat if you're going to work first thing in the morning, right? Okay. And then because it warms up during the course of the day, when you leave work, you forget your coat. And I've done that. I know a lot of you had. For a while, I had a collection of sweaters here at work. Yeah, they just kept piling up. And so eventually I had to just take them all home and start all over again, speaking of rinse and repeat. Okay. Here's something before I get on to the stories that I have lined up for you. You know, one of the pet peeves, and in case you haven't noticed, I have one or two of those. Well, just a couple. So one of them is American English, which is absolutely a mess. I mean, it's just, if I could, I would do so much work on fixing the way we speak and write and so on. And that would be getting the dictionaries to hold the line on words instead of every time people start misusing a word, going with it. American English is a mess. So when people misspell a word or mispronounce a word or, whatever the case may be, I'm very forgiving about that. I really am. When you realize what a mess it is. For example.
So this word is ought, which means this word is thought, which means this word is thaw. No. It's though. Oh.
Now, you've heard me play that before. Here's a guy with a slightly different take on the same thing. And the problem is O-U-G-H.
We've had some complaints. Complaints? About what? The O-U-G-H words. Which ones? Well, all of them. They just don't make any sense. R-O-U-G-H, for example, is rough. So C-O-U-G-H should be cuff, right? Rough, cuff. No, it's cough. Exactly. Cough, rough. So, if you saw D-O-U-G-H, you'd expect it to be doff like cough or duff like rough. Surely. Oh, surely. But it's not, is it? No, it's dough. Dough, cough, rough. So you might think that B-O-U-G-H would be bow, boff, or buff. But instead, you've gone with bow. You've gone with bow. So, obviously, bow with a T on the end would be bout, right? No, it's bought, isn't it? Yeah, bought. And just when you think 5 different sounds for the same letters is too many, you came up with through. Why so many? I was just trying to be thorough.
Aha, see, so, okay. Why, and I'm going to continue this tirade for the rest of my life, although I know, I am never going to win. But I'm just going to continue complaining about it because, English, American English specifically, is a mess. And I haven't seen anybody out there willing to fix it. In fact, the dictionaries that you refer to seem to be determined to make it worse rather than fixing the problem. And originally, the dictionary was there to fix the problem. So, okay, let's take a look at something completely different. A lot of people have been sending me this, and I finally decided to put up something about it. It's on the Wake Up Wyoming website as a post right now, so you can go ahead and see it. Every so often, there is a billboard that's put up. Either you're in Wyoming driving to Colorado, and you see a billboard that says something about Colorado, or you're in Colorado, you're heading to Wyoming, and it's a warning that people in Wyoming have, like, guns, and we're into liberty, and et cetera, et cetera. Wyoming spends a lot of time picking on Colorado, and rightfully so, because Colorado and Wyoming used to be very much the same state. We were very much alike. But then the place has just become a disaster. And it's mainly because so many people from either liberal East Coasters or liberal West Coasters moved to Colorado. Yeah, and then they brought all of their politics with them. So there's a sign on the Wyoming side of the Colorado, right there near the border, that says, Venezuela ahead, be prepared. Now, what this is referring to, remember the story, which, by the way, officials down in that part of Colorado still say that this didn't happen, but it did. So they're lying. So now all sorts of evidence shows that this actually, including video evidence, that this did happen. But okay, so it has to do with this Venezuelan gang that took over that apartment complex in Aurora, Colorado. This is what happens when you decide to make your city and your state a sanctuary city and a sanctuary state. We've talked about this before. It sounds great. It sounds like great virtue signaling to become a sanctuary city or a sanctuary state, until you actually have to do it and then deal with it. And Colorado, like many other states, have not been able to deal with it. The gangs are there. The violence is there. It's costing them enormous amounts of money, high amounts of homelessness, et cetera, et cetera. This has just been an absolute disaster. And yes, Venezuelan gangs have been in Aurora, Colorado, along with other gangs from other people. In fact, who is it that sent me a note earlier this morning about gangs in Chicago? So South American gangs in Chicago now having problems with Chicago gangs that have been there for quite a while. So there's going to be probably a street war at some point. Not like Chicago hasn't had gang warfare before, but a long time ago, it was mobsters wearing suits. Now it's a completely different thing, isn't it? But this is what you get when you decide to be a sanctuary city or a sanctuary state. So that billboard, if you're heading down, right now, if you're heading down to Colorado at some point, look, I believe it's on your right-hand side. I believe so. And it is painted in the colors of the Venezuelan flag. And it says, Venezuela ahead, be prepared. Now, this, if you're wondering who put that up, it was a law firm. And it's a law firm that is fighting essentially for the apartment complex that city and state officials are saying, well, that never happened down there. Well, yes, it did. And the law firm is fighting the idea that it didn't happen. One of many billboards. It reminds me of we had for a while a bumper sticker that said, Colorado, Wyoming's Mexico. You would think at some point Colorado would start getting the point, but no, they have too many problems to pay attention to what we're doing.
You can't control how good a day you're going to have, but you can control how weird a day everybody else has. Be the weirdest, most confusing, unhinged part of everybody's day.
Admit it, you were hoping somebody would say that. News and weather together at the top and bottom of every hour. This is Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods on AM 1030 K2 Radio.
7:20 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. I'm just spending a little bit of time here looking at some of the fire maps around the state of Wyoming. And there's quite a few fires that are still burning out there, but the containment of these fires, the crews out there have done just a fantastic job. I'm looking around Gillette right about now, up into Wyoming-Montana border. There's quite a few fires that were on the state line. And again, the fires are still considered to be burning, however, mostly contained. Even at one, let's see, if we go to, there we go. If I go to Douglas, Wyoming, head south of Douglas, or it would be west of Glendo, and there's a couple of fires out there, 90% contained. I even drove by there on the interstate, and I kept looking for, where's the smoke? I don't see any smoke. Well, whatever's going on out there, it says it's still burning, but mostly contained, and I think they'll get a handle on this pretty soon. And the weather should cooperate. Don Day's extended forecast, he and I talk about it, and that'll be 7:45 when we do that. Now, thanks to Cowboy State Daily for posting this article. I think it's a really good article. And let me see here. Renee Jean, is that your name? Renee, really well done. It's a story about a monster fire, 50,000 acres, Wyoming ranch, that's now essentially a dust bowl. So I'll read just a little bit of the article, but go ahead and take a look at the whole thing on Cowboy State Daily with photos and stuff like that. So near Buffalo, dust devils, the story says, sometimes the only life David can see from his Johnson County ranch as he looks over miles and miles of scorched earth. Right after the fire, the dirt devils were huge, he says. In some areas, there's so much ash, it actually looks like it's drifting snow along the road. Even when the wind is light and gentle, dirt devils are out and about, tap dancing across nearly 50,000 acres of burnt pasture. Sometimes they're the only signs of life in a field where antelope and cattle used to roam. So it's a disquieting sign, she writes. Here's a quote. Within 100 miles radius, there's about 500,000 acres that are burned up. Conditions were just right everywhere. You don't have to have enough of green buffer anywhere to stop it, really. So we take a look at what's going to have to be done out there. This is where we've talked about everything has to be replaced. Some people did lose some buildings. Most of the houses that are out there were saved. But as far as ranch land that was burned, I mean, just throughout the area, it's just blackened. And if you want to see where this is, think of from Casey, Wyoming, up I-25 to Buffalo, but not directly on the interstate. In some cases, yes, but mostly east of the interstate out there. That's a huge amount of area. Fencing has been burned. I mean, how old is some of that fencing going back? How long that's been maintained? And as far as anything living out there right now, it's not like there isn't some wildlife out there, but most of it either was brought out or ran out or died out there. So there's not enough left. And so this is going to be a big operation for these people. And I did have the governor on a week or so ago. He even has some property out in the area, although I don't think his property was that affected. I mean, really all that affected as some of the areas that I'm talking about right now. But they're already getting back to work. And there's going to be a lot to get done. There's, as I look at the pictures here, there's a lot of just black and scorched earth. But here's the good news out of this, and I'll give you some good news. A lot of help has come in from other states. And a lot of help is coming in the shape of, well, I put up a post a while ago. Wyoming ranchers even have a Facebook page where they're asking for help and gathering help and donating and whatever they can do to bring in whatever supplies they can for folks. This is going to be a lot of work. I mean, a whole lot of work. It's going to, here's a picture of their house for the people that were interviewed for this story. The fire went right around their house, even around their big propane tank, but didn't do any damage to the structure or the propane tank because firefighters wouldn't let it. But everything around it's completely burned. It's amazing to see it like that. Well, as burnt as everything is, I'll give you a little piece of good news. Because I've written about this before when we had fires in the past in prairie areas like Wyoming, Nebraska, and so on. Next season, when we get to late spring, it's going to look amazing out there. Now, again, when I had Governor Gordon on, he said his concern was that making sure the cheatgrass didn't come back. But as you know, when things burn like this, prairie's meant to burn. It's supposed to. It's bad for us, for those people out there trying to do business, because now they're set back quite a ways, and it's going to be a lot of work to bring everything back to the way it was before. But as far as the prairie is concerned, and this is a time when a lot of stuff that people wanted burnt away has been. A lot of Wyoming natural grasses have a chance to come back and come back stronger and healthier. And all of the ash that's not just on but in the soil is actually very good for growing everything back. So late spring, bring us enough water to come with it, and late spring ought to look absolutely amazing out there. The hard part is going to be all of the rebuilding that people have to do over the next few years. And this is not going to be, next season they're up and running. So much has been destroyed as far as, again, fence line, outbuildings, and then even herds that have to be rebuilt. So this is going to take a while for things to be brought back to where they were before. But I thought that was a very good article about what situation they are in now, because, you can go to some ranches out there that are just, as far as the eye can see, it's just black. Until things start to come back. Now, on that note, to the firefighters that have been out there, wow, what a job, guys. And I mean on air and on ground, the way that they've been battling these things, so it didn't do more damage. A lot of work has been done by the firefighters that are out there. So thanks, guys, for all that you've done. And I'm wondering, in total, what the bill's going to be. Not just for the firefighters, but what's the bill going to end up being for the ranchers that are out there, and how much money, but also sweat equity, time, that they're going to have to put into putting all of this back. So I do have, and I'll continue to post from time to time, I go to that Wyoming Facebook page where they're collecting donations to help people out there. And it's not just monetary donations. Sometimes it's material. Sometimes people, and we're coming into winter here, and sometimes people just donate, I have hay. I have a tractor trailer. I can deliver stuff. You got stuff to deliver? I'll deliver stuff. I have a tractor trailer. Whatever they can think to do to help these people through the wintertime. It is amazing to see. I really think it is amazing to see the pictures from out in that area where the fire would be all around somebody's home. But the firefighters would just not let it touch the house. The fire might be raging in the grass everywhere, all around. But the house itself is completely untouched. And this picture of this large propane tank sitting next to the house. And they can see that the bottom of the propane tank is scorched because of the fire. But nothing bad happened to it. They wouldn't let it. So it gives you an idea of the priorities of the firefighters out there. As much as they're trying to stop the fire in general, whenever they came across the structure, it was everything they can do to make sure that the home that folks were living in out there would not get burnt down. And what an amazing job they did. Coming up on some local business that we have to take care of, we're going to roll into local news time. After local news time, we'll have our weather forecast. You and I get back into it. Then at 7:45, I think Don Day is back with day weather. So we'll have a nice long conversation about we're into fall now, and it feels like it through most of the area. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods on K2 Radio. Got something to say? Chat him on the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app or call 888-97-WOODS.
$7:36 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. All right. So real quick off to an executive order that Governor Gordon signed just over the past couple of days. It's citing perceived impacts on federal policy, the story says. Governor Gordon issued an executive order last Thursday, aimed at ensuring that no state agency provide U.S. citizens with voter registration materials. This is where our Secretary of State has been trying to figure out how to make sure that anyone who's not a citizen in this country, that make sure they can't vote in Wyoming, which they, of course, shouldn't be allowed to. You got to be a citizen to vote. You got to be a resident of Wyoming and a citizen to vote. So, okay, it also directs those state agencies to stand on those principles when dealing with federal agencies and to report any suspected instances of non-residents voting. So, again, don't hand them any voting materials. And if anybody from the feds show up and try to give you a hard time, stand your ground. And also report anything you might see. So here's a quote. Recognizing the Biden-Harris administration's disastrous border policies compel us to do all we can to protect the integrity of our elections. I, alongside with fellow Republican governors, have taken the action afforded to me by the Constitution and the laws of Wyoming to confirm the security of Wyoming's elections. That was the governor's press release from last week. He said, I remain confident Wyoming's elections are the most secure in the nation. He said, as required by law enacted by the legislators, our county clerks are thorough and diligent when determining, investigating, and verifying voter citizenship. With this order, I reaffirm my commitment to that idea. So the Secretary of State, Chuck Ray, released a statement in support of the order, but said Gordon was still leaving election integrity measures on the table. And so our Secretary of State said, this statement and executive order do not address in any way the problem he created when he vetoed our rulemaking in April, which would have been the key fix to stop illegal aliens from voting, Gray wrote. Wyoming needs proof of residency and citizenship and verifying for voters to ensure that only Wyomingites are voting in Wyoming elections. And again, I had the Secretary of State on last week. He talked for us for just a little bit about that because he's been trying to push this whole idea of election integrity, especially illegal aliens being able to vote. Now, Wyoming, obviously, does not have the same problem that many other states have. And some other states have some big problems with this. And it's largely, just to be straight about it, the Democrats who are perfectly okay with people who are in this country that are not citizens voting, even if they're in this country illegally. In fact, in many states, someone is registered to vote the moment they get a driver's license. So they allow people here illegally to get a driver's license, and then they're automatically registered to vote. But they shouldn't be allowed to vote because even on a federal level, it's supposed to only be U.S. citizens that can vote. Now, there are just a couple of places, I forget how many, just a few places around the country, cities really, that allow non-citizens to vote, but they only allow them, they say, to vote in the local election. So like mayor, for example, something like that. Their idea is, well, you've been living here long enough. You pay taxes. You may not be here legally, but you've been living here long enough and you pay taxes. You should be allowed to vote. That's their logic on that. My answer is no. You've got to become a citizen first, and there's a process for that. And there's a reason we have that process. And once you go ahead and satisfy that process, then you can go ahead and vote in our elections. But there's a reason we have the process. It's not for nonsensical reasons that we have such a process like this. But, okay, so there's where Wyoming stands on the election, and all the governor can do with the executive order is say to the people working your local elections is make sure that they're a resident, that they're a citizen, and stand your ground if any of the feds show up, which I don't think they would to a state like Wyoming. If you think about it, it's so many people are voting Republican, and the state, like last time around, is going to go so heavily for Trump. The idea that something else would happen in Wyoming is pretty far-fetched. But it's the other states that I worry about where they don't have an election integrity and also have a massive population where it's very difficult to keep an eye on what's going on. Very difficult to make sure election integrity is secure in many other states for a lot of reasons, but a big part of it is just the size, the populations they have to deal with. Coming up on 742, let's get Don Day on the line, talk about local weather. Wake up.
Live and local, all across Wyoming. Wake up, Wyoming, with Glenn Woods on K2 Radio. Join in at 888-97-WOODS or the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app.
Manage the disease together. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together. Visit alz.org/time to talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
7:45 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. He's back, Don Day from Day Weather. So, okay, real quick, Don, let's review. Where were you?
First, I was in Germany, and then I made my way to Wales, and then back here.
Okay, and it was all about balloons.
Yeah, it was mostly about that. The Gordon Bennett International Gas Balloon Race went about 3.5 days from late last weekend till the middle of this past week.
Okay, who won?
The Austrians won. It was down to the Austrians and the Swiss. They landed only about 1 kilometer apart. Mm-hmm. You could see the tracks of the race if you go to Gordon. If you just Google Gordon Bennett 2024, it was quite amazing because these teams actually flew out into the eastern Atlantic, came back into southern Spain, went back out in the Atlantic, then came back because it's a distance race.
Yeah,
and It takes a lot of intestinal fortitude to go out and drift over the ocean, relying on the fact that the winds could change at any moment and you could be stuck out there. So it was quite the race.
Did any of the losing teams blame the weatherman?
Of course they do.
Okay, yeah, that would be yours.
But I tell you, you're a pilot, so you know all about airspace.
Oh, my Lord, yeah. Okay, now.
Yeah, so I will tell you, airspace in Europe, you think it might be a little complicated here. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. I've seen the sectional charts for Europe, and oh, my Lord, I don't even know how they manage. But, okay, so while you were here, Mark Ure and Don Watzel were spoiling us with the weather. It's been really nice, and we were kind of hoping you would continue it.
Yeah, and I am going to. I mean, it's if we had power over the weather to make for nice weather, this is exactly how I would draw it up. It's going to be just wonderful. Now, I know folks would like to see some rain, but always remind people the last 3 months of the year, you see a steady decline in the average precipitation. So drying out is to be expected. And we're going to be dry at least through Saturday. If we see a chance of showers, it won't be till Sunday, and it's going to be warm in the day, cool at night. I mean, just picture perfect. Grab the camera. Yeah. This is a peak week for the fall colors.
Well, it really is. Get up into the mountains if you can do that, because already the Bighorns are having a really great show up there. Anything, I know the temperatures kind of bob up and down. This is the time of year when you keep bringing sweaters to work because it's cold in the morning, but then you forget and go home without it.
Yeah.
And so you end up with a collection of sweaters at work? Okay.
Dressed in layers that come off easy.
It seems like the next 10 days or so, the temperatures will be very typical for this time of year.
Yeah. And there's going to be some nights. We did have some areas of patchy frost last night, especially up in northeastern Wyoming. And some folks may have gotten nipped a little bit last night, but we still don't see that widespread cold yet.
Right.
That would end the growing season for most. You're going to have these isolated spots getting some frost, but hey, it's September 23rd,
there you go.
So we're in that time of year.
Well, welcome back. Glad you had fun, Don.
Glad to be back.
All right, coming on up to the, hang on a second here. Wait, hang on. Got to put that switch here this year. Okay. Icebox. Frank Kemp.
Well, there it is.
There it is. The icy sound there. Okay, so let's go through this real quick here. You're not saying that UW sucked, but they were bad.
They are bad.
Okay.
They have been bad.
Yes.
I don't even know if they're going to get good.
Okay,
and all the fans, the Cowboy fans are going, ooh, what next? We play the Air Force next. I mean, maybe they will beat somebody, but when you make the same mistakes over and over again, and the players are just not performing from what they had. I mean, there's 17 returning starters, and their injuries, and it doesn't look like they're having, when you're 0-4, you're not having any fun.
Right.
And part of it, too, is that, hey, this coaching staff, they recruited all these guys.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some recruiting deficiencies here that are years in the making.
Right.
Years in the making. What happened here? I mean, they just don't, they've lost their identity. They've lost their direction. It's just, if they had completely started over, which maybe would have been a better idea, than having 17 returning starters say, hey, you know what, we're going to be good or decent at least or competitive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, okay. This is a woefully underperforming.
It sounds to me like you're saying this season anyway, there's not even any hope for recovery.
Well, but there is.
Yeah.
They have not demonstrated that.
Okay.
We could always give them the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
I will, sure. But if the more you lose, then your fan base really gets aggravated. Then they're not even going to watch the game on TV, and they may not even go to the game.
Yeah, that's why I was saying. I think a lot of people with this last game wouldn't watch it or listen to it on the radio. They would just say, "Tell me what happened later." And then we'll mop up the mess. So.
Oh, boy. All right. In college football, just another woeful performance by the Wyoming Cowboys, losing at North Texas in Denton on Saturday, 44-17. Cowboys are 0-4, and they're just plain bad this year. And the defense really struggled in this game in Denton. The North Texas offense rang up 534 yards of offense, with quarterback Chandler Morris throwing for 305 and 2 touchdowns. Tackling has been bad. There were just a handful of plays that resulted in a loss of yardage. The offense wasn't much better. They had They put 10 points on the board, augmented by a 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown by Tyler King. Quarterback Evan Swoboda continues to struggle in all 4 games so far this year, just 11 of 23 for 155 yards and a touchdown. Plus, the offensive line has been iffy all year long, so the Cowboy running game has been not very good either. And the coaches are being blamed for this mess, and it's about time for the staff to fix this team, which we asked for last year and didn't like anything got fixed. Cowboys will open up the Mountain West Conference season at home on Saturday, meeting the Air Force. In the NFL, the Denver Broncos actually won their first game of the year. They upset Tampa Bay on the road 27-7. New Bronco quarterback Bo Nix didn't throw an interception. He had 4 in the previous 2 games, but was 25 of 36 for 216 yards and a rushing touchdown. More than anything else, the Denver defense really stood up to the Buccaneer offense with 7 sacks. Broncos are 1-2. They'll be on the road on Sunday against the New York Jets. And high school football from over the weekend, first and 4A. Sheridan won their 35th straight game on Friday, crushing Cheyenne East 48-18. So that sets the Wyoming State record for consecutive victories. It's an amazing streak by Sheridan. Cheyenne East is now 3-1. Kelly Walsh is 3-1. They rallied to beat Thunder Basin and Gillette 34-17. Natrona 2-2 after getting shut out 24-0 by 4-0 Campbell County. Laramie 1-3 following a 38-16 loss to Rock Springs. Cheyenne Central won their first game of the year, downing winless Cheyenne South 49-6. In 2A, Burns over Glen Rock 33-12 and won a 9-man Pine Bluffs over Wright 42-10 and won a 6-man Midwest beat KC 45-42. High school volleyball, Kelly Walsh won the gold bracket of the Casper Invitational at the Ford Center, and they handed Laramie their first loss of the year in that championship game in the gold bracket, 25-21 and 21-14. Natrona made the championship match in the silver bracket and lost to Sheridan in straight sets. That's it, sports.
In the meantime, Frank is still running all over the state because, well, now high schools are back in session.
We're all over the place.
And you're just going to be everywhere.
I think they'll have state high school tennis in Gillette on Saturday.
Yeah.
I think I may try to go to Riverton on Friday. So
okay.
Riverton, Gillette.
Right.
For Friday, Saturday. And between now and then, I don't know. I would like to stay home, actually.
No, that's not happening.
Well, I mean, not Friday and Saturday. I mean,
no, but
don't go anywhere else.
No, you're not. It's not that time of year, Frank.
Well, no, I mean, the weather's too good, and the roads are too good,
right.
and the foliage is too good, you know.
So, sorry, Frank, you're just going to have to suck it up and get out there.
All right,
thank you. Coming up on some local business that we have to take care of, we're going to roll into News Time National Local Update on the weather forecast. 8 o'clock hour, we get into open phones, so 888-97 Woods, 888-97-WOODS. Just came across the story. Last full-size Kmart is closing. I'll talk about changes like that and the economy coming up next, plus whatever you want to talk about. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Conferences.
.06 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. It's a Monday, so rinse and repeat.
Today's show is sponsored by Osculation Rejuvenation. For when that hits the fan.
I just came across a story, you might have heard it too, that had to do with the latest assassination attempt on Donald Trump and the note that the would-be assassin left. And this just made me put everything on hold. You gotta hear this.
Warning. Wake Up Wyoming is about to enter daily open phones. This means that anyone will be allowed to call in and talk about anything. I mean, imagine if we actually allowed you on air to say anything you wanted. Scary, right? Well, we're just that brand of crazy. If you are offended by what other people think, then maybe you want to tune out right about now. Just saying. If you should choose to call, just remember, the more funny and interesting you are, the longer Glenn will keep you on the line. Obnoxious jerks will be hung up on. Dave, all right, strap in, and let's do this thing.
888-97 Woods, the phone number. That's 888-97-WOODS. So there was a little bit of worry that the guy who was the latest assassination attempt on Trump might have been let go at some point. Because, what do they have? Well, there's some more gun charges against him. He was a felon. He was not allowed to have guns. But other than that, it's an attempted. Sure it was. I mean, what is the evidence? You know how lawyers work, right? Okay, but then here's something that would keep him right where he is. Story in front of me says, Justice Department released a chilling letter written by the would-be Trump assassin on Monday, today. Department of Justice obtained a letter, handwritten, by the way, from a witness who says he received it inside a box delivered to them several months prior to the assassination attempt. Authorities say witnesses opened the box only after hearing that the suspect was in the attack. The box contained several handwritten letters as well as ammunition, among other things. One of the letters was addressed, "Dear World." Now, this is the quote. Here's the chilling part. Quote, "This is an assassination attempt on Donald Trump, but I failed you." So again, you read this in case he failed. This was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump, but I failed you. I tried my best and gave it all the gumption I could muster. It is up to you to finish the job, and I will offer $150,000 to whomever can complete the job. He said, well, good luck collecting on that. Quote, "Everyone across the globe, from the youngest to the oldest, know that Trump is unfit to be anything much less than U.S. president." The letter continues, U.S. presidents must, at bare minimum, everybody, the moral fabric of America, to be a kind and caring and selfless and always standing for humanity. Trump fails to understand any of that. So investigators say they also found a book he had authored in 2023 titled Ukraine's Unwinnable War, The Fatal Flaw of Democracy, World Abandonment, and the Global Citizen, Taiwan, Afghanistan, North Korea. World War III will end all of humanity. So you can see how this... In the book, he stated he must take part of the blame for the person that we elected for our next president that ended up being brainless. He said, but I am man enough to say that I misjudged and made a terrible mistake. And Iran, the nation Iran, I apologize. You are free to assassinate Trump as well as me for the error in judgment and dismantling of the deal. Yeah, you can see the kind of garbage he's writing, but this is the part that gets, I think, a lot of us, is that I failed you, world, but if anybody can finish the job, I'll give you $150,000. Okay. All right. So this is the letter. Of course, this will be right away brought to court, obviously. This is the letter that will keep him in jail because he flat out, obviously, says right there, well, I tried, and talks about trying to assassinate Trump. That was his goal all along. And it's the kind of guy who's been arrested multiple times but has spent a lot of his life traveling the world trying to do outrageous things because he thought of himself and still thinks of himself as a citizen of the world and had grand ideas on the great things he could do. He is one who tried to join the war in Ukraine, but they considered him to be too old to fight and a little bit of a nutball. And so instead, he went out and tried to recruit people to fight for Ukraine. What gets me is he went to some Middle Eastern countries and tried to, Afghan, places like that, to try to recruit people. Hey, come fight in Ukraine for us. And then again, authored a book. Now, I don't know when he'd say authored a book, was it ever published or not? I don't know. But anyway, sat down and authored a book. I would really love to know. He says, if you can kill Trump, I have $150,000 for you. I really would love to know. And what was he doing for a living? I do know he traveled around doing a lot of work for nonprofit organizations and things like that. So he might have been able to make some money there. But I really do want, well, that's why he was living in Hawaii for a while, working for a nonprofit organization, building homes, things like that for needy people. So maybe that's where he made some money, was able to put stuff aside. But I often look at people like this and wonder, so when you're not being a nutball, which you probably are most of the time, what exactly do you do for a living, pal? how exactly are you making money as you travel the globe doing all of these outrageous things? And there's always somebody out there supporting people like this. So, okay, that's what we know so far. The story does go into a little bit more about what kind of gun he had, some other details where he got some of this stuff from. By the way, he's not supposed to have guns. He's a felon 2 times over. My understanding of it is he's a felon 2 times over. So he's not supposed to be able to get guns. And definitely when he left Hawaii, he did not travel from Hawaii to Florida with guns. That wouldn't have been allowed. So he had to pick them up when he got into Florida. So for those anti-gun advocates, well, there should be laws. There are laws. The guy's a convicted felon. He can't just walk into a store somewhere and buy guns like this. Shouldn't be allowed to anyway. So the question is, so where does he get them? Well, there is a black market out there. My point to the anti-gun crowd, if you think banning guns would have stopped this, he still would have gotten everything that he had. Because your gun bans don't stop guns. Sorry, they don't. Furthermore, when you continue to look at who this guy is and how insane he is, obviously it's not the gun's fault. Because the gun doesn't think. The gun doesn't have motivation. It's an inanimate object. It doesn't have motivation or feeling, nothing. It doesn't have magic powers to cause somebody to do something. Okay. So you have to actually take a look at the person who did this, or attempted the assassination. You have to look at him and decide what's wrong with that guy. So he's not going anywhere for a while, mainly because they have that letter now. Let's Wake Up Wyoming.
Hey, you should try our new prescription medication. Side effects include sneezing, wheezing, labored breathing, trouble speaking, sleeping, eating, hemorrhages, internal bleeding, feeling short of breath, nausea, dry mouth, cough and fever, blockages of the ureter, choking, bloating, tremors, seizures, coma, stroke, or death, mood swings, muscle aches, weight gain, fugue states, osteoporosis, sudden psychosis, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, masochism, vampirism, sudden necromanticism, phantom limbs, fanaticism, chronic deja vu, transient telepathy, changes in your destiny, ancient forms of leprosy, chronic deja vu, loss of hair, weight, smell, taste, balance, vision, hearing, strength, loss of memory, will to live, sense of self. Do not take this medication if you are pregnant, breastfeeding, or a human person. Ask your doctor if it's right for you.
Got something to say? Call 888-97-WOODS or chat with Glenn on the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app from K2 Radio.
8:20 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. 888-97-WOODS is the phone number. And it is open phone, so you can change the subject if you want. That's fine. That's 888-97-WOODS, or do what a lot of other people do. You can send me texts on the Wake Up Wyoming app. Just download it. It's free at your app store. Just type in Wake Up Wyoming. Then hit the chat option and send me text messages, and I answer those back on and off the air both. Update on the story. So I told people about this in the 6 o'clock hour, but for those who join later. On Saturday, this last Saturday, I was in Cheyenne, and I left Cheyenne early in the morning, and I'm driving north on Interstate 25. No, I did not see the airplane land. If I had left just a few minutes later, I would have seen the airplane land on the interstate. I was already out of the area. I was probably past Chugwater when it landed, because it says here it landed about 25 miles north of Cheyenne, and that's an area with a lot of open roadways. There was not a whole lot of people on the highway, so he had a whole lane to himself. There was one car behind him that caught it on video as he came in. They saw that woman was wise enough to pick up her phone and catch it on video as it came in and land it. So a lot of people sent me notes, because you know I love airplanes, and they sent me notes about it. So here's just a little bit about what landed there. I decided, because there's a lot of news organizations that reported this, but here's just what they didn't look into, because they don't think about pilot stuff like I nerd out and geek out on. So first off, it is owned by Timothy Eskman. He's from Missouri. It's a 1969 Stinson is what it's called. Yeah, plane is, in fact, that's a later model of this airplane. They've been built since the early 1960s, probably even sooner than that. The plane is a two-seater, side-by-side seating. You're going to love this part. Not a lot of power. The pilot does not have a whole lot of gauges in front of him. It's very basic in there. It's an 85 horsepower engine. Yeah. Metal frame, but mostly fabric body and wings, mostly. Its top cruising speed is about 87 miles an hour. Usually does less than that. So if he's flying up the interstate and he's flying into the wind, he's going to be watching cars passing him with his speed over the ground. But people like that, the guy, something's wrong. He can hear something's wrong with the engine. So he lands and pulls the airplane off to the side of the road, parks it basically with the nose pointing out toward the. If you parked it like you would park your car on the side there, his wings would be sticking out into the road. So he put his nose to the highway with the tail sticking out in the grass, and then the wings go up and down, where you would park. They're on his shoulder. And then he gets out and pulls a bunch of tools out. Yes, a cop showed up. People pulled over to see if he was okay. He's fine. Just something wrong with the engine there. So he gets out. And he starts doing whatever was the problem with his engine, and he fixes it. Then hops back in, and the cop holds traffic off for a bit, and he takes off. Now, you can imagine a plane that small doesn't need a lot of runway. And as I said, I was driving up that day. There was kind of a good gusty wind. So with that good gusty wind coming at him, he really does need a lot of runway. And with the whole side of the interstate there, he's got this in a very short distance. He's off the ground and flying home. Seemed to have made it fine. Nothing bad happened after that. Just something was wrong, and he landed, fixed it, and took back off again. So again, small airplane, little two-seater, and goes about 85 miles an hour if there's no wind. If he's flying into the wind, he's going a lot slower than that. Not meant to go high and fast. The whole purpose of those airplanes is low and slow and puttering around. And you figure if it was built in the 60s, that goes back a ways when airplanes like that were very basic. I mean, really basic inside. And also not a whole lot of room. Now, especially not a lot of room by today's standards, because Americans have gotten a lot bigger. You figure where we were back in the 1960s, size-wise, weight-wise, most people were not very big. So you get two people in an airplane like that, they'd still be sitting shoulder to shoulder, but there's plenty of room, and even with like a 80 horsepower engine, still plenty of power to lift off two people. They'll do just fine. But with as big as Americans are today, I'm sorry, folks, we've gotten fat, really fat. You put one person in an airplane like that, and that just might be enough to carry it. Now, this guy, looking at a picture, and I don't see a front picture of him. It's from picture from the back as he's opening the door and reaching in. He looks to be, a not short, but shorter man on the thin side. So he'd be perfect size for an airplane like this. And when it says I looked up the airplane registration, which is easy to do. When it says he's from Missouri, I wondered, was he just going on a cross-country flight? And a lot of people with little airplanes like this like to do that. They may not travel the entire country, although I've seen some do that. But most of them will at least fly around the region or take long trips. And, yeah, that does mean a lot of stops. And weather does play a big role because the weather has to be just right or they're not going anywhere. But they're not going to fly very high off the ground. They're not going to go very fast. But, again, that's not the point of the airplane. So there was not a big emergency here. The guy is just fine. Now, if you want to see more about it, I've got not just a picture of the airplane. A lot of people have shared pictures of the airplane and the video online. But also some more information about the airplane. Plus, if you're into that kind of stuff, there's a couple of videos about that airplane, that kind of airplane, because it's got a great history. In fact, I even know a gentleman who's my flight instructor. He has two airplanes, and one of them is one of those models. And he's been fixing it up as a labor of love, because just like some people like classic cars, this is a classic plane. So they're just like older classic cars don't go very fast and so on. Neither does the old classic plane, and that's kind of the point of it. Just that labor of love and the joy of flying. So, yeah, I'm glad nothing went really wrong, and I'm also kind of glad that, I should say, no, said that wrong. I'm sorry that I missed it, because like I said, I was heading up the interstate, and I already passed through that area. And then somewhere behind me is when that landed, and I was too far away to see it. In fact, I would have been looking forward, not so much in my rearview mirror anyway. So I was way out front when that thing landed. If I had just waited a little bit longer, of course you don't know these things, I would have seen that sucker come right in, or I would have at least pulled up behind it after he'd already parked it. And again, he pulls over to the side. He gets the chocks out for the tires, and this was a smart way to park it, with the tail sticking out into the grass, so the wings are up and down on the shoulder of the road, his nose pointing toward the interstate. There, he's just fine. And then the cop pulls up, gets out. You okay? Yep, fine. Nice landing, too. Since I drove that section of interstate, I can tell you it was a little bit on the windy side, but that plane can handle it. But it was pretty much in that area. The wind was pretty much right up the middle of the interstate. So I had no problem coming in and landing. In fact, pilots of small planes like that tend to fly over roads when they can, be it a dirt road, a backcountry road, an interstate. They like to take over roads when they can that don't have a lot of power lines and so on. Just in case something goes wrong, it gives them a place to land, which is exactly what he did. All right. Last full-size Kmart, not Kmart, full-size Kmart has closed. That's an end of an era. This is like saying that Sears is closing, right? And JCPenney. And the first JCPenney in Wyoming is still up and running. We'll talk about that in the next segment. Coming up on local news update on your weather forecast, you and I get back into it. 888-97 was the phone number. That's 888-97 WOODS. Wake up, Wyoming.
Now, Glenn Woods fits in your pocket with the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app. This is AM 1030, K2 Radio.
8:36 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. So I came from a different era because I don't consider myself an old guy, but I'm older, right? So as I take a look at the kind of stuff that I had let's talk stores here when I was a kid. Remember the Five and Dime? Yeah, they were all over the place. There were stores like Rose's. There's a lot of stores like that were all over the place, and these were the precursors to your Walmarts and Kmarts and stuff like that. There was Sears and JCPenney. And again, JCPenney created in Kemmerer, Wyoming, the original store, which I still have to go visit because it's still open. Right? But JCPenney's been having problems. Sears has been having problems over the years. I do know. And what is it? Was in Rawlins, I think, folks? Yeah, that there's still a Radio Shack. And I went and saw it. They were closed that day. It was a weekend, but I have to go in and see them at some point. It's not a full-size Radio Shack like you're used to. It still has the Radio Shack name on the outside of the store. When you walk in, there is a little area in the front. It's a good-looking store that it has a lot of Radio Shack stuff you're used to, but it's a very small store. Most of it, though, they're a computer repair shop. So there's a few of these still around, but most of these places have disappeared over the years. And I understand that. That doesn't necessarily mean things are going bad. It's just that, companies come and go and fail. One of the things that I like about this, as much as I always hate to see a company go downhill and disappear, but that's what capitalism does. When a store gets on top, you kind of expect them to stay there forever, but they're not going to. Because competitors start nipping at their heels. And if they can't keep up, if they can't stay on top, then eventually they will go away and something better will replace them. And that's what capitalism does. One of the reasons I don't like government running things, especially stuff like healthcare, energy in general, because government doesn't shut things down. When something is failing, they just keep pouring more money into it, determined to keep it up and running even though it's failing. But with capitalism, it's let it fail. If it isn't working, let it go out of business. That's why last week I was talking about in Casper, Wyoming, they have the Hoganon Ski Resort. And it was going to close down. So correct me if I'm wrong, folks. I think that, did the city buy that out? Yeah. And cities will even go buy out golf courses that are failing, things, other businesses like that. My answer is no, don't. Let it go. This is what the free market does. And it's a good thing to let things that are failing go away. Or if something was good, but then something better came along. Well, the good thing can go away because now we have something better. So here's the story. The last full-size Kmart, not Kmart, but full-size, in the continental United States is set to close October, leaving only one downsized location, according to reports. The department store chain, which operated about 23,000 locations in the early 1990s, will shutter the full-size store in Bridgehampton, New York, on October 20th. That means a smaller Kmart store in Miami will be the last one remaining in the U.S. as a Kmart, which is now owned by, it names a company and so on, that also has other stores in the Virgin Islands. The company did not immediately respond to requests or comment from Fox Business, which owns shopping centers and both Kmart's located in New York and Florida, but they told Newsday that the store will be indeed closing. Again, this is the big, I remember those that we can name different towns. Gillette, Wyoming. There was a Walmart and a Kmart right next to each other, and they were both the full-size stores. I know those folks in Cheyenne. You had a Kmart location for a while. And I had begun wondering, after a bit of seeing Kmart's closing, are there any left in the country? This is answering my question here. The Kmart location that's been open for 25 years, according to Newsday, they say the website for that Kmart discount store opened in 1962 in Garden City, Michigan. That's where it started. The company filed for bankruptcy in 2002 before merging with Sears. I didn't know they had merged with Sears. Years later, then filed bankruptcy in 2018. Other remaining Kmart locations in the continental U.S. include Kendall Lakes Plaza in, again, Miami. The Miami Herald reports that Kmart store there leased out nearly all of its former spaces to Home Goods and At Home and places like that. Kmart location has now been reduced to what used to be the garden department. So while you can still say in Miami, hey, we have a Kmart, yeah, but it's so small. If you walk into a Kmart and you think about the garden department, out of the whole store, that's all that's left of it, just that size area. All of the other space they've leased out, so it's not really a Kmart anymore. Chet Yoder, Kmart closed its last full-size store in New York City. Yeah, that's what I'm, you mean in the city itself, New York City? Okay, because this one is New York, but it's a different town in New York State. So, yeah, they're closing all over, and that had me wondering for a while, whatever happened to, where are the Kmarts? Are any left over here? There's the answer to your question. You're about done. At the time, I remember the blue light specials. That was a big deal. But I also remember other stores. Again, where does your Sears go? A lot of JCPenney's have closed down. Rose's, many other stores like that have just not done well over time. Now, some people might look at it and think, well, that's the economy. Not necessarily. Because companies come and go for all sorts of different reasons. But again, that's capitalism, and the answer would be, and let them go. Because their competitors are going to scoop up their market share. If you're thinking, well, a bunch of people just lost their jobs, trust me, their competitors are scooping up their markets and their employees. Tim and Casper, Montgomery Wards, oh yeah. You remember, you used to go into for those who went to malls, where I grew up, there were a lot of malls. And the way a mall worked was there was always the anchor stores. So at one side of the mall would be a Sears. At the other side would be a JCPenney. And if they had more than two sides to the mall, they would open up different big stores that people really love going to, and that would attract the majority of the people. And while people were in those big stores, they would wander through the mall and see all of the smaller stores, which some would be chains and some would be just local businesses. And that was the philosophy of how a mall worked. But then when the chain stores started to go away, now what? What attracts people to malls? Which is another thing that's also, you've been watching this over the years, been failing. Malls used to be a really big deal. Now so many malls have not only closed, they've flat out been demolished just because that business model doesn't work anymore. Now again, imagine if government was running all of that. When something isn't working out, they keep dumping money into it in a desperate hope that someday it'll work. If they just dump enough money into it and keep increasing its size and power, someday it'll work. That's why government programs never shut down. It's one of the reasons I hate government taking over anything. They don't know how to run anything, and they don't know how to let something go when it's not working. Yeah. Chet says, I miss Kmart's ham and cheese sandwiches. Really? What was the store? I'm trying to remember. There used to be a chain store that my mom and I used to go to a lot. And it was a big store. It had a lot going on. But they also always had a little restaurant in it. Not much, but they would have a little bar you could sit out on the stool, a couple of booths in there. And it was a big chain store that was seen all over the place at one time. And I'm trying to remember the name of it now. 8:45, wake up when...
And we're back. Sorry, we were busy tricking pescatarians into eating Rocky Mountain oysters. Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods.
8:48 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. I'll have to go to the icebox to talk to Frank Gambino. Okay, Frank, we're going to go down memory lane on this.
All right, I don't remember much. But...
So, the last full-size Kmart is closing down.
Oh, I thought they were out of business forever.
Well, almost. Now,
is that Super Kmart?
I'm sorry, is there what?
Super Kmart or whatever?
No, well, just the big ones, and they're gone. There's a couple, there's one in Miami, but if you walk in the location, they've rented out most of their floor space, so there's not much left of the Kmart. It's in a corner of the big building.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there's not much left. So
Casper at one point had two.
Yeah, really? Okay. And I know Cheyenne had them. Up in Gillette, there was a Kmart up there. Okay, so I started going down memory lane about a lot of the stores. And I don't mind. I mean, if a business can't keep up, let them go because their competitors absorb them and on, right? And so some of the stores that we might remember as a kid. Now, a lot of people helped me out in this one, including some people who called the show. I asked the question, what was the store that you can go into and shop, but they also had that little restaurant inside with a bar and so on?
Yeah, like the Targets. And
Woolworths.
Woolworths, yeah.
I remember that because my mom...
Actually, their food wasn't so bad for a greasy
wasn't,
spoon.
no.
Yeah.
My mom, when she would go shopping and I was a little kid, would take me with her, and we would always have lunch at Woolworths, just on the way. So, okay, I remember the grilled cheese sandwiches were really good as a kid.
Yeah.
All right, so some of the other ones, let me see. Montgomery Ward's.
I remember those, yeah.
Okay, of course, Sears and JCPenney were always a big thing. But then I started running down the list. Oh, Rose's. That was a big one for a while. Five and Dime.
Yeah, like the Ben Franklin stores, yeah.
Yeah, they were all over the place. I do remember Five and Dimes. And, of course, I always worry about JCPenney because they started here in Wyoming. And the last Wyoming location is still open.
We'll see for how long.
That's what I need to go out and visit them because it's still open. And
you'll be there all by yourself.
If you go to Rollins, there's a Radio Shack.
Oh.
Now, there's not much in it. When you walk in, the front of the store, it's a good-looking store. The front of the store has your basic Radio Shack items, but not a lot of it. And then if you look into the back and they have an upstairs, it's mainly a computer repair shop.
Yeah.
But it still has that big sign out front that says Radio Shack. But mostly Radio Shack is online, and what they have on their website is not worth going to visit.
Oh, boy. All righty. Let's talk about college football if we really want to. Another woeful performance by the Wyoming Cowboys, a 44-17 loss at North Texas on Saturday night in Denton. The Cowboys are 0-4, and they're just playing bad this year so far. The defense really struggled in that game in Denton as the North Texas offense, who has a significant amount of talent, running at 434 yards of offense with quarterback Chandler Morris, who started his college career at TCU, throwing for 305 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tackling for UW has been bad, and there's just been just a handful of plays in that game that resulted in loss of yardage. The offense really wasn't much better. They had 10 points on the board, augmented by a 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown by Tyler King. Quarterback Evan Swoboda still has not found his groove in all 4 games so far this year. Just on Saturday, he was 11 of 23 for 155 yards and a touchdown. The offensive line, which had 4 returning starters coming back, have not played well at all. And the coaches are being blamed for this mess, and it's, as we said last week, it is time for the staff to fix this team. Cowboys will open up Mountain West Conference play at home on Saturday, meeting the Air Force Academy. High school football from over the weekend. First and 4A, Sheridan won their 35th straight game on Friday, crushing Cheyennes 48-18. So that win sets the Wyoming State record for consecutive victories. Cheyennes falls to 3-1. Kelly Walsh was 3-1. They rallied to beat Thunder Basin and Gillette 34-17. Natrona 2-2 after getting shut out by Campbell County 24-0. So the Camels are 4-0. Laramie's 1-3 on the year following a 38-16 loss to Rock Springs. Cheyenne Central won their first game of the year, downing winless Cheyenne South 49-6. In 2A, Burns over Glen Rock 33-12 and won a 9-man Pine Bluffs beat Wright 42-10 and it won a 6-man Big West over KC 45-42. In the National Football League, the Denver Broncos won their first game of the year and they upset Tampa Bay on the road 27-7 on Sunday. New Bronco quarterback Bo Nix didn't throw an interception. He threw 4 of them in the first 2 games and was 25 of 36 for 216 yards plus a rushing touchdown. More than anything else, the Denver defense stood up to the Buccaneer offense with 7 sacks. Broncos are 1-2 and they'll be on the road on Sunday against the New York Jets. And in high school volleyball, Kelly Walsh won the gold bracket of the Casper Invitational, and in that championship game of that bracket, they handed Laramie their first loss of the year, 25-21 and 21-14. Natrona made the championship match in the silver bracket, losing to Sheridan in straight sets.
Okay, if I was a coach and my quarterback threw 4 interceptions,
well, over 2 games,
I would show up with a picture of what the other team looked like and what our team looks like, and say, see, these guys, not those guys.
Yeah, the same color jersey would be helpful.
That's right, yeah.
Guys catching the ball would be helpful, too.
Yes, oh yeah. Anybody who's wearing what you're wearing, good.
Yeah, everyone else, bad.
Yeah, bad. Just keep that in mind. We'll get along fine. All
bad dog.
Yeah. Thank you, Frank. Coming up on some local business we got to take care of. We're going to roll into news time after that, national, local, your weather forecast, and open phones. It's Wake Up Wyoming. 6 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. It's a Monday, so rinse and repeat.
Today's show is sponsored by Osculation Rejuvenation for when the hits the fan.
Yeah, or when it just gets knee-deep because it's election time.
Warning, this show contains reference to guns, liberty, limited government, low taxation, the cult of climate change, free thinking, cigar smoking, short people, rubber chickens, Karen's bureaucracy, liberal buzzwords, tour runs, traffic, toilets, terrible jokes, and more. No apologies will be issued. Guest callers may express any opinion they want without fear of being canceled. Unless you're a loudmouth jerk like Dave, then Glenn will hang up on you. Strap in, hold on to your coffee, and feel free to participate.
This disclaimer does not refer to every person named Dave. Just one particular Dave from San Francisco. We know a lot of Daves. They call this show all the time, and they're great people. So don't call this program and complain that we use your name. That would be a real Dave move, Dave.
So last week, let's go to California for this one. Governor Newsom of California signed an executive order, which among many that he's not allowed to sign, but that doesn't stop him anyway. In this executive order, anyone who's on the internet creating content of any kind, videos, pictures, memes, whatever, that is considered to be fake or even deep fake, well, he's banning them in California. Which means, he can't do that, and it's not going to work out. And the immediate response to that, after Newsom signed the executive order, was Elon Musk since he owns Twitter, or X if you call it that, right away ended up writing something satirical about Gavin Newsom. Just to poke his finger in the eye of Gavin Newsom. Like, you can't stop it. There's nothing you can do to stop it. Sorry. Plus, it's the First Amendment. You can't do that. And several other people out there put up different memes and so on, making fun of it, stuff that they can't take down in California because it's just not possible. But Gavin Newsom signed that executive order. I think, and you got to hear this. This is so good. The best one, I've said before, the Babylon Bee, I used to for many years and still do admire Onion News. Babylon Bee surpassed the Onion long time ago in satire and parody. They're just so good. I really admire the work they do. So what they did was they got artificial intelligence to sample Gavin Newsom's voice and then created a video where you hear Gavin Newsom talking about California and banning deep fake videos. This is hysterical.
Hi, I'm Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. This is a message for the people of America, given in my authentically recorded non-AI voice. Thanks to my leadership over the last several years, California has become a world leader in extremist left-wing governance. My policies were so effective that almost 1 million people are now fleeing the state every year. We even ran out of U-Hauls. Last year, I cleaned up the dangerous, messy streets of San Francisco, because Chinese Communist President Xi was coming, and I really wanted to impress him. He's my boss, after all. On my watch, the cost of living and homelessness have skyrocketed. Schools are failing. Drug dealers and human traffickers are pouring across the border. And poop has covered the sidewalks of San Francisco. This is the positive, joyful vision we offer as Democrats. That's why I'm enthusiastically endorsing Kamala Harris for president in 2024. She'll do to the country everything I did in California. Anyway, I'm California Governor Gavin Newsom, and I approve this 100% real message. This isn't a deep fake, and you can rest assured that it isn't, because I just signed an unconstitutional law outlawing deep fakes. No one would dare violate it. Thank you, and science bless America.
See, that was put out by Babylon Bee, which is why I say that's absolutely brilliant. And the AI does a pretty damn good job at making it sound exactly like Gavin Newsom's voice. Just amazing stuff. And I'm glad they're out there doing things like this. And more people will be poking Gavin Newsom in the eye because, again, it's just not possible. Okay, we haven't heard from him in a while. Greg and Laramie. Greg, I was beginning to wonder what you were doing up there or down there and if you were okay, because it's been a while.
Well, it hasn't been that long. I mean, I've been listening, but I've been traveling around. And, I've had to do some work. So that's, I ebb and flow. I just, again, I've heard a lot of what's going on. I wanted to talk about, you claimed that, and again, the nutter that tried to assassinate Trump or thought he was going to, he did vote for Trump. I find that funny. Mm-hmm. But I also want to talk about the gun thing, is that Republicans have emphasized shall not be infringed, and they've created this world. In other words, our side wants people to be well regulated. And again, the right will always say, it's just about how they march. No, you do not want nutters to have guns. That's the point. And that is what has been happening in America since we have reduced our gun laws. We have shifted to the balance of shall not be infringed, and we should go back to being more well-regulated.
Okay, so let me attack two different things. First off, this guy, yes, he did vote for Trump the first time, but if you actually take some time to take a look at this guy's life, he has been a nutball that's been all over the place as far as his beliefs are concerned, and he really is a disturbed human being. So if you think he's a MAGA hat-wearing guy, definitely not. Sorry, Greg, you can't have that. He's not a conservative. I wouldn't even put him in the liberal camp. I just put him in the nutball camp when you take a look at his life history. But if the fact that he voted for Trump has nothing to do with his life history, go check that out. The next thing is, as far as the guns are concerned, this guy had already had 2 felonies. which means he's not allowed to go into a store and buy a gun. When he left Hawaii, he did not have guns. He showed up in Florida. He did not go into a store to buy the gun. He got those guns illegally, which means your gun laws to prevent a guy like this from getting guns aren't going to work. He's just going to go on the black market.
Because the loopholes that you want to close about people getting guns that are mentally deficient, Wyoming fights in every Republican fight.
I can't wait. I can't believe that you just said that. Hang on, Greg. I can't believe you just said that. Listen to my words. Listen carefully. He went and bought the gun on the black market. What does that have to do with loopholes?
The people that are buying the guns, filing off the serial numbers, are breaking the law.
Right.
And tracking those people now that sell guns to nutters should be our emphasis.
Okay, Greg, you're still not hearing me. You're still not hearing it, Greg. You can pass any law that you want. The black market doesn't care what the law says. The black market is still going to get guns and sell them to guys like this. What are you going to do? There's nothing you can do about that. You can't stop it because it's the black market. That's why they call it the black market.
I'm familiar with the black market. It is wrecking America by banning naturally occurring plants. We can argue that a lot. Capitalism does ruin a lot of things. But we do need to be very vigilant about letting nutters have guns. Mm-hmm. And if you want to make a lot of money, and a lot of money, just be a roofer in Florida, a real roofing contractor in Florida, which is what he was. I know plenty of them. They make a lot lot of money. They don't need to be
but that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. The point is, if you want to, if you want to stop stuff like this, you have to focus on what's really going on, and we need to get better at not just. I mean, this guy was on the radar screen of not just our own FBI and CIA, but other governments around the world were watching this guy because he was that kind of an international nutball. And yet nobody did anything about it. They just let him continue on. We don't have any system in place to take care of people who are this unhinged and unstable. And that's what we got to focus on. If he wasn't able to get a gun, Greg, he would have just tried something else.
Well, he obviously didn't get the right gun. I mean, anybody that's getting AR-15 for an assassination attempt, again, we've talked about this again. They never have a Barrett 50.
Right. But so if he wasn't able to get a gun, but let's answer this, though, Greg. If he wasn't able to get a gun, do you think maybe he would have tried something else?
Well, again, he's always been trying things, but I will also go back, and the media has missed this, is that this is actually the third assassination attempt on Trump.
Okay, but you're not answering the question, though. That's not the question. If this guy, if you were able to pass some law,
he would get a Barrett 50 caliber. Are you saying that if he couldn't get a gun, he would get a knife and get Trump?
Or he could have tried an explosive device.
You mean the terrorist device that the Israelis used to blow up?
Again, you're changing the subject. You're changing the subject.
Well, no,
he could have made an explosive device.
About well-regulated. We need to get.
If he couldn't have gotten a gun, Greg, he would have made. Greg, if he couldn't have gotten a gun, he would have either made an explosive device or made some kind of lethal gas or tried to run Trump over with some big truck. I mean, God knows there's so many different ways to kill a person. Poison his food. So, in other words, this guy was determined to kill Trump, and denying him a gun would not have stopped him. You want to go after the guy, not the tool that he uses.
I agree.
Okay.
They need to be well regulated, and that's the point.
It's amazing, Greg, every time we have these.
Republicans have gone to shall not be infringed, and we are arguing not to ban guns. Only the people that are nuts that don't understand the Constitution are trying to ban guns.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
Okay.
You need to get guns away from nutters. You need to be well regulated.
Right.
The emphasis on shall not be infringed.
I just think we need to deal with nutters.
Reaping what they sow by letting nutters have guns.
Okay. I just think here's where we disagree. I think we need to deal with the nutballs and not take a look at what tools they use. But I got to run, Greg. Good to hear from you again.
Reagan made a mistake. Let them go.
9:18 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods on K2 Radio. Join the conversation at 888-97-WOODS.
9:23 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. Off to the phones to talk to Josh in Laramie County, who wants to respond to Greg. Good morning, Josh.
Hey, Glenn.
Yes, sir.
How are you?
Good. What you got?
Hey, your last caller on guns and the Second Amendment, I cannot believe that comments he's even making.
Mm-hmm.
What he failed to tell you is well-regulated. The last word of that's militia.
Right.
We don't have a militia right now. We haven't formed one.
Right.
And the Second Amendment does guarantee the right of the people to keep and bear arms. And that says it shall not be infringed, period. I mean, and if that's been through the courts so many times, and he's talking about taking away people's gun rights, they really don't understand that they're not going to be able to take away guns from common citizens that are legally can own guns.
Right. Or for that matter, let's talk of what I was trying to get into his head about the black market. You can take it. Let's say you did take away guns from your average citizen out there, but the black market is still going to be selling guns to all the criminals, and you're not going to stop that.
You know, just all you have to do is look at what's going on in the United States of America right now with illegals who have invaded our country. They're getting guns, and who knows, they're breaking into houses, they're buying them illegally, they're going to get guns. They may have even brought them with them across the border.
Right.
So, I mean, and they want us to give up our guns, which is our only defense of an invasion into this country.
Right.
You know, and if he was my neighbor, I would gladly not protect him at all when they're charging into our county to kill American citizens. I'd sit back and go, let that one go.
Yeah.
But, you know, we can't do that now. We have to look like what's going to happen. You better be prepared for what's going to happen to our country in the next 5 to 10 years. You are going to have groups of people that are not here to become Americans. They are from another country and they never wanted to become Americans, so they form their own little group.
Yeah.
And that is going to be a really downfall for this country.
All right, Josh. Thank you for responding. And I got a lot of other people who sent me notes here about what Greg had to say. So let me back up here and go through a few of them. Let me see. Roth in Laramie says, Don in Laramie says, Roth is a convicted felon, yet he still votes. So when he voted for Trump, he voted illegally. I'd have to see when he became a convicted felon that he couldn't vote, just to make sure of the timing on that. But you might be right. Javadad in Cheyenne. Is Greg's last name Nutter? Well, okay. Tim, Greg needs to look the meaning well-regulated militia, well-regulated militia, which is what our last caller just said. Look that up because he's getting it wrong, which is true. Because Greg did not read all of what the Constitution said when he was quoting that. RNC Coffee Queen in Douglas. I appreciate the fact that when you talk to someone like Greg, you stay calm and collected and just give the facts, which he can't respond to with anything that makes sense. Maybe he needs to be locked up mentally as well. I think what Greg does, and if you're listening, Greg, I'm calling you out on this. Greg, you avoid the topic. Every time I corner you on an argument, you try changing the subject, which you notice I don't let you do. Crane Doctor in Sebring. Glenn, and that's why you get paid the big bucks talking to nut jobs like that. I was screaming at the radio. I could hear you screaming at the radio all the way from Sebring, Florida. And Chetton Yoder. Glenn, I know you mean well, but don't be rational or logical with a Democrat. Well, yeah, you really can't be. But no, and then there's another one about a well-regulated militia. Does Greg understand that there are laws against possessing drugs? But I hear that drug charges, every day we have people charged on drugs. You can go ahead and make something illegal, but that's not going to stop it. It just doesn't. That's what I was trying to get across to him. So here we have a guy who's a convicted felon who flies to Florida without any guns. He's not allowed to buy them because he's a convicted felon. And then he goes and buys whatever he wants because he's doing it illegally, meaning you can make it illegal, but that's not going to stop it. So what are you going to do then? You got to think about that. And again, I did have somebody here, by the way, in the comments compare Greg to Dave from San Francisco. The reason I like it when Greg calls is because Greg is, at least he is civil. Sometimes he's very funny. He and I disagree on pretty much everything. But at least we can have a civil conversation about it. Where I call Greg out, not just factually, but every time I corner him on an argument, he tries to change the subject, which I don't let him get away with. He still didn't answer the question because he kept trying to change the subject. And it's a very important question. What are you going to do when people who want guns for bad purposes just buy them illegally? What then? And what if we could take the gun away from this guy who tried to assassinate Trump? What if we could rid him of his gun? What would he have done instead? Made explosives? Try to run Trump over with a big truck or something like that? Noxious gas? There's so many ways to kill someone. Poison his food? There's so many things that could have been done. Taking his gun away wouldn't have meant a damn thing. Let's Wake Up Wyoming.
He's not a politician, but his pants are on fire. Could someone grab an extinguisher? Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods.
9:36 the time. Let's Wake Up Wyoming. So Don in Laramie says Ryan Roth, the guy who's tried to assassinate Trump, has felony convictions in 2002 and 2010. He should have been barred from voting in 2016. Yeah, okay. If those convictions had not, I mean, at some point people get their rights back. So maybe he didn't have them back. Maybe he did. I don't know what his situation was. But go back to what Greg was saying that I'm still going to harp on, because I bring this up so many times with people who would like to have either a gun ban or at least stricter gun laws, whatever the case may be, is why do you continue to blame the gun? See, for me, when you see someone try to assassinate somebody else, be it Trump or somebody else, and they bring a gun, my thought is always, boy, you really lack imagination. I know the gun's easy. You go get a gun, and you point it at the guy and pull the trigger, and there you go. It's pretty easy, right? But it lacks all sorts of imagination. Yeah, you can stab somebody, but you can run them over with a big vehicle. You can take a drone. You know, the Ukrainians are taking drones, store-bought drones, and they're attaching grenades to the bottom of them and flying them over the Russians, especially when a Russian tank has its top open so the guys in there can get some air in. They'll fly them right over and drop the grenade right in and blow up everybody inside the tank. And so you can do that to kill somebody. You want to make some poison gas? Would you like to make an explosive device of some kind? But we can poison their food. We can poison their drink. Okay. And there's so many things that we can do. Someone picks up a gun, that's why I think, boy, that person just lacks imagination if that's what you're going to do. But, okay, just ban the gun, huh? That's what you're just going to go ban the gun, as if that's going to stop them. And as I pointed out, you ban the gun, and the guy he's a convicted felon, so he's not allowed to buy guns. Yet he went off and bought guns. And the answer is because your laws on guns don't mean a damn thing. They don't do anything. Anybody who wants to get guns is going to get them. So you can go ahead and ban the gun, but that's not going to stop anything. The point is, and always is, you're focused on the wrong thing. When you look at someone who wants to commit mass murder, I don't care what tool they use. They don't always use a gun. They use many things. We got to search what Greg kept calling him a nutter. Well, okay, let's take a look at nutters, if that's what we're calling them. We're calling them nutters, fine. So let's take a look at nutters. We have to identify them and figure out what to do about it. Because in every single case, whether it's an assassination attempt, but let's pick the problem, whatever it might be. Someone tries to shoot up a school or a mall or whatever the case is. However, somebody tries to commit mass murder. It always turns out that we had all sorts of red flags. All sorts of red flags. We saw it. I mean, authorities were watching this guy. They knew something about him. But they just really couldn't do anything or didn't want to do. I don't know if they didn't want to or couldn't or just, I don't know what it is. But they don't do anything. And so we end up with a disaster on our hands. Now, I'm not going to sit here and claim they have all the answers for you, because I certainly don't. But the real solution to the problem is to locate nutters when we see them, when we have someone shooting up red flags all over the place, and have some kind of a system in place where we can deal with them. Whatever that looks like, we can certainly talk about that. Because I'm not, as I've said many times before, I'm not interested in what tool they use to commit their crime. I'm really not. I don't care. Whether they used a gun or something else, that's not my concern. My concern is they wanted to commit murder. And sometimes even on a mass scale, they wanted to commit murder. And that's what we need to stop before it happens. And that's the thing we've been struggling with as humanity. This is not a recent development. I mean, this has been going on for how long? And by the way, now that I think about this, if we go back in human history, let's go back before the invention of the gun. Were leaders of countries assassinated? Yes, obviously. Before the gun was invented, leaders of countries, kings and so on, were assassinated. That's why oftentimes a king would have somebody test their food before they ate it. Yeah, you get some servant who you don't mind it if the guy drops dead. And he's got to sit down and eat some of the food to make sure it's not poison. If he lives, then the king can sit down and eat. But there were so many other ways that rulers, leaders were assassinated before the gun was ever invented. So if your idea is, well, I'm just going to get rid of the guns, you're not solving the problem. Because the gun is not what the problem is. The problem is that there's some nutball out there who wants to do something heinous, some horrible crime. Okay, and trying to label them, well, he voted for Trump once. He's not a MAGA hat wearing Republican. I'm sorry, he's not. Okay, so you can't have that. When you take a look at the guy's history, that doesn't play out. What he is a nutball, or a nutter, as Greg says. And there's what we have. And I say this every time, even when we have mass murder committed somewhere. I end up saying the same thing over and over again. That's what we have to deal with. 9:42, Wake Up.
Got something to say to Glenn? Use the chat on the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app and get your opinions straight to the studio with K2 Radio.
Coming up on 9:48, off we go to the icebox. Frank Gambino is waiting by. Frank's very strange question for you, okay?
Hey, I'm ready.
You ever notice that some parts of your body do all the work and other parts of your body are just lazy?
Well, you got to motivate all parts of the body.
Let's see.
How many bones? 365?
Something like that, yeah. That's one. Well, you can break one a year. Okay,
yeah.
So isn't it weird? They have one hand that knows how to do pretty much everything. And the other hand just sits there like, I don't even know how to hold a pencil.
Well, because if you were taught that way, say naturally you're, like I'm right-handed, and I don't do very much with my left hand. I can catch baseballs with it, but that's about it. And golf with it. Then, yeah, you're right. I mean, so at a younger age, you're going to say, hey, you got to develop both your left and your right. You don't have to be ambidextrous out of this whole thing.
But pick it up a little bit.
Yeah.
We tend to be, depending on who you are, left or right eye dominant.
Yeah. I'm not sure which one I am, but
there's one eye who's not pulling their weight is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
When you go to kick a ball, do you always kick it with the same foot pretty much?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So there's one foot out there that's pretty much doing all the work, but the other foot...
Well, no, they're doing different kinds of work.
Are they?
Yeah. And in kicking, like the left hand, the left foot's got to, find a solid place to be and hold that spot. And then the right foot does the kicking.
Okay. See, now I was telling a friend of mine, I was showing him an airplane, which is very popular today. It's a little four-seater airplane. And instead of a yoke, it has a side stick. There's an armrest with a stick on the side, on the left side.
Yeah.
A friend of mine said, I don't think I could fly that because, I'm right-handed. And I pointed out to him and said, yeah, but when you drive, you're a left-handed driver. If you think about it, I asked him, do you drive stick shift? What hand do you shift with?
Your right hand.
You do. Yeah. So most people drive with their left hand, so the right hand can operate the radios and stuff like that. But you think of yourself as a right-handed person, and yet now if you were over in the UK, wouldn't the opposite be true?
In aviation?
Well, no,
driving?
Then driving.
Yeah, because you would shift with your left hand.
Yeah, you would. Yeah.
Now he in the plane would just all he has to do is if he can't do it with his left hand, just turn around and face the back of the plane.
No, you can,
then
he
sit
on
the
other side.
Right,
you sit on the other side because there's dual control.
Oh well, of course.
But anyway, my point there is that your body has one hand, one foot, one eye, et cetera, one nostril that does most of the breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And then other parts of your body just seem to be slackers.
No, they're sitting on the bench waiting to get in the game.
Oh, is that what it is? Because when I called them,
redundancy. You need two.
I don't know about that because when I call them up to step up and play the game, they let me down every single time. They have no idea what they're doing.
Got to ask them nicely.
Well, I'm about 60-40, just so you know, when it comes to that kind of stuff.
All right, I'll buy that. National Football League, the Denver Broncos won their first game of the year yesterday, upsetting Tampa Bay on the road 27-7. That was the first loss for the Bucs this year. New Bronco quarterback Bo Nix didn't throw an interception. He had thrown two in the previous two games and was 25 of 36 yesterday for 216 yards and a rushing touchdown. More than anything else, the Bronco defense on that line of scrimmage and everybody else really stood up. They registered 7 sacks in the game. The Broncos are 1-2. They'll be on the road on Sunday against the New York Jets. High school football from over the weekend. First in 4A, Sheridan won their 35th straight game by crushing Cheyenne East 48-18 Homer Scott Field. So that win sets the Wyoming State record for consecutive victories for the Bronx. This is a record that stood for over 60 years. And Cheyenne East falls to 3-1. Kelly Walsh is 3-1 after they rallied to beat Thunder Basin and Gillette 34-17. The Tronas 2 up and 2 down after getting shut out by Campbell County 24-0. So the Camels are 4-0. Laramie's 1-3 on the year following a 38-16 loss to Rock Springs. And Cheyenne Central won their first game of the year downing winless Cheyenne South 49-6. In 2A, Burns over Glen Rock 33-12 and 1A 9-man Pine Bluffs beat Wright 42-10. And in 1A 6-man Midwest over KC 45-42. In college football, it's been a bad month of football for the Wyoming Cowboys. The whole month. Folks are 0-4, and they're not very good as they lost to North Texas on Saturday in Denton 44-17. UW defense was just gashed. The North Texas offense, 534 yards of offense. Quarterback Chandler Morris threw for 305. Tackling has been bad for UW, and there was just a handful of plays in the game for the Cowboys that resulted in a loss of yardage for the Mean Green. And the Wyoming offense wasn't much better. You know, they had been 10 points on the board, but augmented by a 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown by Tyler King. Quarterback Evan Swoboda continues to struggle. That's been well documented. He was 11 of 23 for 155 yards and a touchdown. The offensive line with 4 returning starters has been iffy. The coaches are to be blamed for this mess, and as we said last week, it's time for this staff to fix this team, if they can. Cowboys will open up the Mountain West Conference season at home on Saturday night, meeting the Air Force. High school volleyball, Kelly Walsh won the gold bracket of the Casper Invitational at the Ford Center over the weekend, and they beat Laramie in the championship game of that bracket, and handing Laramie the first loss of the year, 25-21 and 21-14. The Trona made the championship match of the silver bracket and lost to the Sheridan Bronx in straight sets. And that's it in sports.
So I know it's early yet, but how are the Broncos looking, do you think?
Well, I don't know how they actually won a game. Miracles happen.
Okay, so you're not holding that much hope.
Wonders never cease.
Okay.
Every day has its dog.
That's okay.
And I'm just, I don't know how they did it.
Yeah, okay. So Tampa Bay must have just screwed up. Or Tampa Bay was giving them a sympathy win.
Well, they shouldn't have been because Tampa Bay was playing at home and they had not lost.
Okay.
They were listless.
Listless. Okay, now I have to look up that word.
Listless.
Listless. I probably have heard it before.
Yeah.
Just slipping my mind.
Just listless.
That part of my brain that's the lazy half.
Yeah.
Which is growing every day.
That's the part of your brain that's listless.
That's right. Thank you, Frank. Coming up on some local business, we have to take everyone well into news time. After that's Wake Up Wyoming.